Agut Tov, Shavua Tov. As we are starting the month of Av, we know this month under the name of Menachem Av, the comforting Av, the comforting father. The Sephardim call it Av HaRachaman, the merciful father. Is, yes, the month in which we remember the destruction of Yerushalayim, the Mikdash temple in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, but also the month of the hope of the rebuilding, the month of within the destruction we see the Geula, the redemption, and therefore is a month that will comfort us, that will have mercy on us, and that will show us, talk about Menachem, the letter Mem, Moshiach will show us a redemption. Last week I told story number 35 of the Shivchei haBaal Shem Tov. There is a great segula on telling Baal Shem Tov stories, Sipurei Tzadikim. The Baal Shem Tov refers this to Dafka, specifically we tell Baal Shem Tov stories. Motzei Shabbos, when Shabbos finishes. But, okay, so the story I told last week was probably one of the longest, if not the longest I've told yet, and has several elements, is kind of complicated, and I left out 3 paragraphs at the end, which I'm going to tell now and put them together with the story. Last week's story begins at the Baal Shem Tov in Erev Yom Kippur. A certain year could not bless people. He was very worried, concerned about something. He gave a very strong speech against those who write the false introductions, rabbis who were basically given their blessing and writing this introduction to books in exchange for money. So people will think that they really meant that the people they were sponsoring were true sages and they should be followed, and it was not. And the problem is that there is this followers of Yaakov Frank who used this method to get their writings into many Jewish homes, and they were able to get a large amount of Jews to abandon Torah and to follow Yaakov Frank in one of the crazy things he did, to go to a church and massively convert Jews. Also to get to gather volumes of the Gemara, of the Talmud, and burn over 1,000 or 2,000 sets of the Gemara. These terrible times caused the Baal Shem Tov to, in this Yom Kippur, second time in his life, we have known this of 12 years after the first time, his neshama, his soul ascends up to heaven to try to release the prayers, that tefillos that are not allowed to enter heaven, not able to open. Baal Shem Tov talks to his master, to his teacher, Chia Shiloini, who takes him to the palace of Moshiach. Now, a center place in the story. Moshiach gives a blessing to the Baal Shem Tov, gives him 2 letters, and these 2 letters, Aleph Bey, 2 letters, not written letters. This the Baal Shem Tov uses to open the gates of heaven. Thus, the tefillos go up in Shemayim, and it's a great time. Now, I mentioned there are 3 paragraphs at the end of the story I didn't mention. So the author of the book, Rabbi Yaffe, says, Aval pam achas ayah Rabba Chassid, Moreino Menachem Nachum de Keilas Chernobyl. But, he says, once there was this pious rabbi, this Chassid Rab teacher, our teacher, Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl, who came to our city, and he told us this story about the Baal Shem Tov Erev Yom Kippur, and in front of the people, he gathered people and told them the story. And I came in the middle of the story, and the way I heard the story, it was a bit different, and I learned a new thing. So now a twist or a difference on the version of the story that we told last week. Moshiach told the Baal Shem Tov, Eineni yodea im tuchel lifzoach. I don't know if you will be able to open that gate, but if you will be able to, certainly it will be a great salvation for the Jewish people. Bevada Yeshua Israel. And he said, furthermore, this Rabbi Nachum Chernobyl, it says that Mashiach said that this gate was called the Eichel Kan Tzipor, the palace of the nest of the bird, which only Mashiach is allowed to enter. And this is mentioned in the Zohar, in the second part of the Zohar, base chapter 7, paragraph 2, for those who actually follow those levels, readings in the Zohar. So, in the Zohar, this palace is referred to as Eichel Kan Tzipor, the palace of the nest of the bird. That's where the Baal Shem Tov entered, or to the courtyard of this palace, and saw Moshiach at a distance. And there he heard the godly voice, the voice of God, saying to him, what can I do with you? What will I do to you that I must fulfill your will? In other words, what you have come to request here, it will be fulfilled. God knows that the Baal Shem Tov is in this mission, that he is in the place to ask for something that will happen. That's one paragraph. So we have a description of where the Baal Shem Tov was able to go. Leyoidei Chochma Nisteres, for those who know this hidden knowledge of Kabbalah, and that Mashiach put a condition on whether he will be able to do it, but if he does, it will be a great salvation, and that there is a godly voice saying, your will be done. Then the second paragraph says, the Rav of our community, I heard that the Baal Shem Tov was very upset as his guests. I had a hard time understanding this paragraph. The guests that came to the Baal Shem Tov, this is another moment, like another story, where people connected to those who wrote the false introductions, those rabbis who gave their approval to writings in exchange for money, as if they were reviewing and giving their approval to the content of these writings, and that caused that the books of Yaakov Frank, of this sect, will be spread among the Jews and cause the Jews ultimately to leave Judaism altogether. So the Baal Shem Tov was very upset about these guests. These guests were responsible for this. And it caused them to leave his house. He was so upset. And then they sent a shliach, an envoy, to calm the Baal Shem Tov down. And he heard that his wife, Rabbi Tzimchana, the Shem Tov's wife, was admonishing him for how he treats the guests. Baal Shem Tov slept at night by his table, saying that he is willing to accept the toichacha, the admonishment for his wife. And he sent a request to those guests. I guess a request for them to come back, or I don't know. In the morning, the Baal Shem Tov prayed from the Amot, in the Tefillah B'Tzibur. So some takana the Baal Shem Tov did, something about these guests. Now, the context of how this is happening historically is the rabbis in general actually saw it with a good eye what Yaakov Frank did. Because in the moment that he took all his followers, 3,000 people, to the Cathedral of Lvov to become Christian, to baptize, basically they could single them out and say, now these are the followers of Yaakov Frank. So they stopped having this ashpa, this influence among the other Jews. So they saw it as a good thing. Let them get lost and not be part of the Jewish people anymore. Here comes the third paragraph in this story, in the end of the story. So regarding these people who did shmat, the heresy of leaving Judaism for another faith, I heard from the Rabbi of our Kehillah, says Rabbi Yafin, the author of the book, that the Baal Shem Tov says that the Shechina was taken away from these people. The Baal Shem Tov explains that so long as a limb is attached to the body, even if it has an injury or illness, there is hope it will heal. But if you cut it off, it's lost. The Jews who abandoned Judaism altogether, they were lost. So long as they were still Jews, there was hope. You could correct them, okay? They're following Yaakov Frank. The Jews have all kinds of ideas, but could bring them back. But if you allow them to live all together, if they become identifiable as non-Jews, you have lost. That was the Baal Shem Tov's biggest concern. And I understand now what the Misnagdim will be accusing the Baal Shem Tov of siding with the Frankisten. He was not siding with them at all. He was just concerned on how far this sect was taking the Jews. Eventually, Yaakov Frank and his followers will diminish, and by the time of his daughter, that's a whole story, the last followers will have to go into hiding, as the daughter of Yaakov Frank would end up in a tremendous debt that she probably had to fake her own death to try to get away from her debtors, and the sect disappear. All right, that is the end of the story. We're in the 9 days, and we should learn what was the Beis HaMikdash and what will be the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, and learn to see, to recognize Moshiach in everything in our lives, in our days, with our plain eyes. Shavua Tov, Akut Tevach.